Have you ever watched somebody fix something and thought, that's not worth the trouble? A man in his 60s, workshop off the back of a barn in Adams County, Indiana. Saturday afternoon, he's got a kitchen chair turned upside down on his bench. One leg wobbles, not broken, loose. He pulls open a drawer, finds a wooden dowel he cut from scrap 3 years ago, glues it in, clamps it, and sets the chair by the wall for tomorrow. Behind him, a shelf of mason jars, sorted, screws in one, hinges in another, leather strips, clasps, pieces of broken handles saved because the wood was still good. Nothing on that shelf was bought. Everything came from something that broke. Most of us would have looked at that chair, thought about it for a week, and ordered a new one. $40, 2 days, problem solved. Except the new chair wobbles in a year too, and nobody in the house knows how to fix that one either. And that is the gap. Not effort. Not some kind of iron discipline. Timing. They fix things at the moment it's easy, not the moment it's urgent. Amish communities now live in more than 30 states, and the population has roughly doubled about every 20 years. They are not stuck anywhere. They are making choices, and one of those choices is that an object brought into the house earns its place by being repairable, or it doesn't come in at all. 11 habits, most of them free, all of them doable in a regular house with no barn and no workshop. You don't need land, a horse, or anyone's religion. You need about 10 minutes and a willingness to open a drawer instead of a browser tab. 1. Fix it the day it loosens, not the day it breaks. That chair in the workshop didn't get carried in because the leg snapped. It got carried in because somebody sat down at supper and felt a quarter inch of play. A quarter inch, that was Saturday's job. Glue, a dowel, a clamp, and 10 minutes. The chair went back to the kitchen on Monday. In most households, that wobble lives for 6 months. You learn to sit in it a certain way. You mention it twice. Then the joint cracks, the leg folds, and the chair goes to the curb. The difference between those two outcomes was not skill. It was the decision to act while the fix was still small. Here's the thing worth remembering. A 10-minute repair on Saturday costs nothing. A replacement on Wednesday costs $40 and a trip. And the replacement will wobble too, eventually. Except now nobody in the house has practiced fixing it. So the chair gets repaired on Saturday. But how does a household keep track of what needs attention and what doesn't? 2. The pencil date on everything. Tuesday morning, winter, a kitchen table. A woman opens a drawer and pulls out a small notebook. In it, a list. Not groceries. Dates. When the boots were last oiled, when the stove gasket was checked, when the rocking chair was tightened. A pencil mark on a jar lid tells her when the tomatoes went up. A pencil mark on the underside of a chair leg tells her when the glue was last set. This is not a calendar. This is a maintenance log for a household, and it runs on a pencil and a scrap of paper. You probably own a car that reminds you to change the oil, but the kitchen table you eat at every night, the boots you wear 3 days a week, the hinges on the back door, nobody is tracking those. They just quietly loosen until something gives. The habit costs 4 seconds. Write the date. On the lid, on the underside, on the tag. The pencil is the cheapest insurance in the house. Now take that same logic and walk it over to the stove. 3. Season cast iron. Never soak it. A weeknight after supper, late August, and the kitchen is still warm. A skillet comes off the stove. It gets wiped with a cloth while it's hot. A thin layer of oil, rubbed in with a rag. Set back on the burner for 30 seconds, then hung on the wall. No soap, no soak, no scrubbing. That skillet has been in the family longer than anyone in the house can say for certain. And the cooking surface is slick enough that an egg slides off without a spatula. Meanwhile, most of us buy a non-stick pan every 2 years. The coating chips, the handle loosens, it goes in the trash, and we start over with a new one that will do the same thing. A cast iron skillet, treated right, outlasts the person who bought it. Wipe it hot. Oil it thin. That's the whole skill, and it starts tonight. That skillet stays because somebody decided to maintain it. But what about the parts that fall off other things? The screws, the hinges, the small metal pieces most people throw away without thinking. 4. Save the hardware. Spring morning, a workshop in Holmes County, Ohio. A boy of 12 stands at the bench, pulling apart a broken cabinet door. Not to fix it, the door is done. He's saving the hinges. The screws go in a jar. A small brass clasp goes in another jar. The wood gets set on a shelf for later. Nothing goes in the trash. That shelf behind him holds 24 jars, each one labeled in pencil. Flathead screws, Phillips, small nails, hinges, hooks, wire. This is not hoarding. This is a supply depot that costs nothing to stock, and it means the next repair starts with a walk to the shelf, not a drive to the hardware store. When was the last time you threw out a broken thing without checking whether any part of it was still good? The screw that held the old hinge might be the exact screw that fixes the next one. So far, everything we've covered you could touch. A chair, a pencil, a skillet, a jar of screws. The next one lives in the barn, but the principle fits in any closet or garage. 5. Oil on a schedule, not on a symptom. First Saturday of the month, early December. A harness hangs over a bench in the barn. A man rubs oil into the leather with his bare hands, working it into the stitching, the buckles, the places where the straps bend. The harness doesn't look dry. It doesn't need to look dry. That's the point. Leather cracks when it's already too late. The oil goes on when the calendar says so, not when the surface says so. Most of us wait for the squeak, the crack, the stiffness. By then the damage is set. A leather belt, a pair of work gloves, a good bag, a pair of boots. Anything made of leather lasts twice as long if you oil it once a month, whether it looks like it needs it or not. Not when it asks, when the month turns. That belt in your closet, the one that's starting to curl at the edges, when was the last time anyone put oil on it? 6. Buy to resole, not to replace. Late November, a front porch and a pair of boots sit on the top step. The soles are worn smooth, and the leather is dark from years of oil. These boots are going to a cobbler, not a shoe store. A cobbler. The soles will come off, new ones will go on, and the boots will come back looking rough and fitting like they always did. A family might resole the same pair 3 or 4 times before the uppers finally give. Meanwhile, most of us buy boots built to be thrown away. Glued soles, synthetic uppers, comfortable for a season, done by spring. The next pair costs the same and lasts the same. Here's the quiet math. One pair of boots resoled 3 times costs less than 4 cheap pairs, and by the third resoling, the leather has shaped to the foot in a way no new boot ever will. Next time you buy shoes, ask one question: can these be resoled? If the answer is no, you already know how the story ends. So a household that oils leather monthly and resoles boots instead of replacing them already owns things that last. But what about the things that can't be resold? The soft goods, the fabric, the quilts. 7. Patch before the hole shows through. February evening. A sitting room lit by a propane lamp. A woman holds a quilt across her lap, running her fingers along one edge. She stops. There's a spot where the fabric has gone thin. Not torn, not split, just thin. She threads a needle and reinforces it from the back with a scrap of cloth that matches close enough. The quilt goes back on the bed. Nobody in the house will notice the patch unless they look for it. That quilt was started by the woman's mother-in-law and finished by 3 people. It has been on beds in that house for decades. Not in a closet, not under glass. On the bed, washed, slept under, mended. Here's what makes this different from how most of us handle fabric. She didn't wait for the tear. She went looking for the weakness. That is a completely different relationship with a thing you own. You are not responding to damage. You are ahead of it. The same motion works on a coat seam, a curtain hem, a backpack strap. Find the thin spot. Reinforce it while it's still easy. And here's a number that puts it in perspective. The average American household throws away about 70 pounds of clothing and textiles a year. 70 pounds. Most of it could have been caught at the thin spot. That habit, catching the weakness before it becomes the failure, runs through everything in a house like this, right down to the tools on the bench. 8. One good tool, not 5 cheap ones. Midsummer, midday, a workshop bench in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. A hand plane sits on the wood, catching the light from the open door. The blade has been sharpened so many times it's half its original width. The sole is dark with use. It still takes a shaving you can read through. That plane came from the man's grandfather. 2 owners, 1 tool. Most of us have a drawer full of tools we bought for one job and never touched again. A cheap ratchet set, a plastic-handled screwdriver that stripped on its 3rd screw, a drill bit that dulled before the hole was through. 5 tools that each lasted a year cost more than one that lasts a lifetime, and none of them ever got comfortable in the hand. When was the last time you reached for a tool and felt like it knew you? But one good tool needs something else behind it. A place where the part that wears out finds a second life. 9. The scrap shelf. After a spring storm, a shed behind the barn, and the man from the workshop is sorting through a pile of wind damage. A fence rail, split. A gate hinge, bent. A length of oak trim torn off the eaves. The wood gets stacked on a shelf. The hinge gets straightened and dropped in a jar. The nails get pulled and saved. Nothing leaves. And now here's the payoff on something planted earlier. That wooden dowel he used to fix the chair in Habit 1? It came from this shelf, cut from a piece of scrap 3 years before it was needed. He didn't know what it would fix. He knew good wood doesn't go in a burn pile. This is where the whole system lives. The scrap shelf is the reason a repair can start in 10 minutes instead of 10 days. It's the inventory nobody paid for, stocked entirely by things that broke. You can start one this weekend. A box in the garage, a jar on the workbench. Every time something breaks, ask one question before it goes in the trash. Is any part of this still good? If the answer is yes, save that part. You will not believe how fast the box fills, or how soon you reach for it. The scrap shelf keeps material, but the next habit keeps something harder to hold on to, the surface itself. 10. Let it season, not shine. A dining table in a farmhouse kitchen, oak, dark with decades of use. No finish on it you'd recognize from a furniture store. The surface carries every year it has been sat at, cut on, wiped down, and scrubbed. It is not damaged, it is seasoned. A cast iron skillet works the same way. So does a leather tool belt. So does a wooden cutting board. The instinct most of us have is to make things look new. Sand it, refinish it, polish it, coat it. And every time you strip the surface, you start the clock over. In many Amish households, the goal is the opposite. Let the material build up its own protection. The oil soaks deeper. The grain closes. The wood gets harder. A table that has been wiped with a damp cloth every day for 20 years will outperform one that was polyurethaned last month. The habit is restraint. Stop trying to make old things look new. Let them look used. That is not neglect. That is the finish doing its job. So 11 habits, and 10 of them are about objects. The last one is not. 11. The neighbor's repair. Early spring, a Saturday morning, and a gravel lane between 2 farms. A man walks over to his neighbor's place carrying a wooden toolbox. Not because he was asked. Because he saw the fence leaning on his way back from town. He spends 2 hours setting posts and restringing wire, and then he walks home. No invoice, no favor owed. In many Amish communities, this is not generosity. This is maintenance. The same way you oil a harness on the first of the month, You check what your neighbor needs and you show up. The fence gets fixed before it falls. The barn door gets rehung before it jams. The habit applies whether you live on a gravel road or a paved one. You know somebody, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, who has something that needs fixing and doesn't know where to start. You probably have the tool. You probably have the Saturday. The longest lasting thing in any household is not a skillet, or a quilt, or a hand plane. It's the decision to maintain what you have and to help the people around you do the same. Nobody in any of these households calls it a philosophy. They just call it Saturday. 11 habits, a dowel from scrap, a pencil on a lid, a skillet wiped hot, a jar of saved screws, oil on the first of the month. Boots built to be resoled, a patch on the thin spot, not the tear. One good tool instead of 5 cheap ones. A shelf where nothing useful gets thrown away. A surface allowed to season instead of stripped back to new. And a neighbor's fence fixed before it falls. None of it required a barn or a farm or a buggy. All of it required a decision made before the thing came into the house. This will be maintained. That's not thrift. That's not nostalgia. That's a household organized, so the repair is always easier than the replacement. Remember the man at the workbench? The chair with the wobbly leg? He didn't look it up. He didn't order a part. He walked to a shelf, found a dowel cut from scrap he saved 3 years ago, and the chair was back at the table by Monday. He wasn't being old-fashioned. He was being ready. You don't need a workshop. You don't need 11 new habits. Pick one. The pencil on the lid, the jar in the garage, the 10-minute fix on Saturday instead of the $40 replacement on Wednesday. Start with the thing that wobbles. Which one of these did somebody in your family do, without ever calling it a skill? A grandmother who saved every button. A father who kept coffee cans full of nails. Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this made you think of somebody, send it to them. And if it was worth your time, the like button tells me to make more of these. Next time, we're looking at how a plain kitchen feeds a family of 9 through a full winter without a single delivery. If you want that one to find you, subscribe. That chair is back at the kitchen table now. Monday morning. Somebody sits down, pours coffee, and doesn't think about it at all. The leg doesn't wobble. It won't for years. And somewhere on the underside, in pencil, a date.